This morning's gospel is from the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 22. Once more, Jesus spoke to them in parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding banquet for his son. He sent his slaves to call those who had been invited to the wedding banquet, but they would not come. Again, he sent other slaves, saying, 'Tell those who have been invited, look, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and my fat calves have been slaughtered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding banquet.' But they made light of it and went away, one to his farm, another to his business, while the rest seized his slaves, mistreated them, and killed them. The king was enraged. He sent his troops, destroyed those murderers, and burned their city. Then he said to his slaves, 'The wedding is ready, but those invited were not worthy. Go therefore into the main streets and invite everyone you find to the wedding banquet.' Those slaves went out into the streets and gathered all whom they found, both good and bad. So the wedding hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to see the guests, he noticed a man there who was not wearing a wedding robe. And he said to him, 'Friend, how'd you get in here without a wedding robe?' And he was speechless. Then the king said to the attendants, 'Bind him hand and foot and throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen.'" This is the gospel of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
When we were planning today's service, we didn't quite know where to put the temple talk. And I said, I think we should have a little separation between the temple talk and the sermon, because I didn't want to give the impression that I had to correct something that was said in the temple talk. Actually, having heard Steve's temple talk, the real reason is because Steve is a hard act to follow. That was a great temple talk. Thank you very much. We also had to shorten a couple of things in the service, and we probably had taken out something that we were going to have to put in anyway. We took out the psalm for today. The assigned psalm for today is that familiar psalm, Psalm 23. I probably could do it by memory. I'll try. Oftentimes when I do that by memory, I get so thinking about, I hope I don't make a mistake. I hope I don't make a mistake that I make a mistake. But here goes. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." I repeated that psalm today because this morning I want to take you on a quick, wild romp through Psalm 23. Psalm 23, wild? The psalm we read so somberly at funerals? How can that be? Well, think for a moment about why we read it at funerals, and why, for that matter, it holds such an important place in our collective conscience. It's comforting. It promises God's providence and presence. It promises God's protection, even in the face of death. For all these reasons, it's a great psalm for a funeral. But I want to argue it's even a better psalm for the days of our lives before our funerals. Because more than anything else, Psalm 23 promises that God will provide. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Want. Think for a moment about how powerful wanting is in our culture right now. Consumer spending now accounts for fully 70% of our gross national product. More than ever, our economy is powered by our collective nights out to dinner, trips to the grocery store, and shopping sprees. And to make all that work, we are encouraged at every turn to want more stuff, to want nicer stuff, to want lots of stuff. Now, the downside of all this wanting is that in the process, we begin to live with an imagination dominated by a pervasiveness of scarcity. Far more aware of what we don't have and therefore should go out and buy than what we do have. We are consumed by what we lack instead of grateful for what we have. We are driven to get more instead of content to celebrate enough. And we measure ourselves against our deficits instead of glorying in our gifts and in our blessings. This is where Psalm 23 comes in. At every turn, Psalm 23 promises us God's providence and provision of everything we need in this life. So how is it that we have forgotten that? Part of it, of course, is the consumer-orientated culture in which we live. Bombarded 24/7 by advertising that seeks always to make us more aware of what we don't have, it's easy to be seduced into thinking that happiness comes from getting everything you want, instead of recognizing and wanting all that you already have. Here's where the stewardship message comes in. You see, I think congregations are no different. How often does the church celebrate all that they've accomplished? How often do they celebrate, the churches celebrate, all that they've been given? How often do churches celebrate all the blessings with which they have been entrusted, instead of worrying about budgets and the need to find more Sunday school teachers? Now, don't get me wrong. Churches need your financial support. And churches are accountable for what they are doing with that support. But when that is the primary message about stewardship, churches only feed into the popular assumption that if only we had more, we'd be happier. Psalm 23, that beloved psalm that all of us know so well, stands against all of that with its simple, singular, and salutary affirmation. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Used in this way, Psalm 23 is a protest against all the voices that seek to rob us of our confidence in God's providence and identify us by what we're not. Psalm 23, used in this way, is a solid declaration that we are those people who have been richly blessed and so can lead lives of confidence, courage, generosity, knowing that what we have, indeed, being blessed to be a blessing. And for that, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for your stewardship to this congregation. I'm grateful that God has gifted you so much. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Amen.